So what's your definition of GitOps?
What's my definition? Basically it's providing a level of quality assurance and quality management in a DevOps CI/CD pipeline. And I suppose, we've had this conversation, that it looks like a really good facility for ensuring that, once, rather than just pushing stuff through to be implemented, it actually has to go through this sort of process of understanding whether it's going to work and what the quality of it's like, and actually having a proper pull environment within there. So from that perspective, I think it's long overdue, and that's really my basic concern, is what on earth was going on before GitOps?
Before that, yeah.
Because GitOps is, you would have thought, is an absolutely critical part of the CI/CD pipeline if you want your application to run correctly, performantly first time, please, and so from everything I've seen, there was an awful lot of cottage industry type sort of ops teams trying to fix any issues going on, which sort of tended to make a lie out of the sort of whole DevOps culture, which was, that ops and dev are going to be on the sort of same page. Every time I look at GitOps, it looks good, and you think, yeah, absolutely, that's needed. But what on earth were people doing beforehand? And therefore, what was the quality of the code like coming through, and where were errors picked up and where were performance issues picked up? Because now GitOps is going to do that and actually ensure that, from a site reliability engineer's point of view, they can see and have the observability into, the state of the code that's being pushed through the pipeline or being pulled, so getting it properly organized in the CI/CD pipeline. And apologies to DevOps people if I get my terminologies wrong, because I'm not a DevOps native person. But fundamentally, that was the thing for me that looked at it. It goes, yes, that's the sort of thing that operations teams absolutely needed to have visibility on. Why has it taken so long? I think is my only sort of problem. But the fact that it's become a sort of hot topic is interesting, in the sense that maybe it's the pressure of this ever increasing pace of delivery and the ever increasing criticality of the apps. Maybe when DevOps was a new kid on the block, fewer of the apps were as mission critical as they are today. And now, particularly with what happened during the pandemic and more and more stuff going online, it's just become absolutely critical that this stuff works right first time.
I agree, and I think the general treatment is that it's looking at treating infrastructure in the same way as we would kind of treat our development code. So approaching it from that sort of DevOps mentality, really, and that sort of methodology as well. So that's how kind of we have been treating sort of code development for a while, and now actually infrastructure is going to sort of get the same treatment as well. So it's kind of sort of quality line pipeline.
Yeah, we've talked in the past about how is this aligned with infrastructure as a code, and of course it is very tightly aligned with infrastructure as a code. And again, because you've abstracted everything away from the actual underlying infrastructure, that magic has to happen somewhere. And if you get the code wrong in the first place, you probably have the ability to replicate the problem far more widely and far quicker than you ever had before, because of the whole infrastructure as a code piece. So I guess part of the drive for things like GitOps is that has become much more of an issue. When you were having to code thinking about what the actual underlying infrastructure was, to an extent, you were going to have to go into a little bit more detail in the code. Now you don't have to bother. So if the code's wrong, if the code's got problems in it and you haven't done, due diligence within the GitOps piece, then the chances of creating issues further down the line are huge.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, and obviously the other part of it is policy as code, actually being able to kind of bring in policies into what you're building as part of your infrastructure, and the because kind of Kubernetes and those sorts of platforms kind of been kind of brought in more of a declarative approach, to or basically making everything declarative, as code. We're kind of looking now at sort of declarative infrastructure really as well with GitOps, and obviously the result of that is I think what the likes of Weaveworks, for example, would call trusted delivery. So basically what you're now kind of putting out into your sort of little world of the public cloud is much more validated, and part of includes your policy as part of that infrastructure, versus kind of everybody doing their own little Terraform scripts and things like that and putting those out separately without any governance or anything like that, and without kind of a collective way of having those sort of agreed and tested and policy and things like that as well.
And I think in order to make the whole infrastructure as a code, the whole API economy work well, having that inherent trust is going to be critical, and I think it's a mindset change. Again, a lot of DevOps is seen as sort of culture change, and one of the culture changes is the need to get things right first time, and the need to be able to observe, interestingly enough, and see the state of those, not just the code but the APIs, for example. And again, what we're seeing is huge numbers of APIs need to be managed now, and therefore having things that are manage that API environment. If you can pull that all into the sort of GitOps environment, I think it becomes a very powerful tool set for site reliability engineers, but also I think to build that trust that you're talking about. I think it's absolutely critical. So it's good to see, but late to the party, guys.
yeah, absolutely. Yes, I mean, certainly I'm not necessarily kind of any particular names, but I've seen a lot of shouting from the likes of Weaveworks, CodeFresh, and this type of platforms that are appearing in this space. Include things like Argo CD, for example, and that's kind of tends to be probably one of the leading sort of open source platforms, and kind of Flux doing the agent side of that as well, where it's kind of looking for configuration drift, again, yet another term to get familiar with in this sort of in this GitOps space as well. So that's kind of the Argo CD kind of being the main tool for that, and then sort of the likes of Flux being kind of the agents that actually pick up on any changes as well that happen.
Yeah, I mean, the other area, and perhaps this is for a later discussion, is some of the commercial tools that are sort of sitting out there. Things like Evolven, which is really does effectively the same thing. I'm sure we'll have a fairly interesting debate in the sort of in the wider metaverse, if you like, or the wider internet of commercial versus open source. And of course, it gets very blurred because an awful lot of commercial software is actually based on a lot of open source code, and how is that integrated in? But, again, sometimes if you're small or medium-sized or even large businesses without all the technical resource and expertise, how do you take advantage of all these, open source tools? I think so is something that, again, we probably need to revisit. This is a great little world for the people who know exactly what's going on, but for the average, business out there struggling with this, there's maybe a need for the commercial product still to exist or develop alongside. So I would say when I was looking at GitOps and you come across product like Evolve and think, well, it's doing the same thing and it's open. I was going to say open, and you also have to be careful about terminologies around open. We can conflate and miscall that one. But
considering we're trying to stop that today, Paul. So.
Exactly. That's right. Okay. Let's
try to avoid that. Ourselves.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? That it's so easy to start doing that. But no, I think GitOps is looks good. I think it's going to be a great tool to help that building that trust in an infrastructure as code environment. Let's watch this space.
Thank you for watching this talk. If you enjoyed the content, please comment, share, like, and subscribe to support the channel. You may also want to check out some of the other videos on this channel. See you next time.